One of the biggest criticisms for AEW over the past few years has been their attendance. Many fans point out how many weeks on Dynamite, half, a quarter, or even more of the arena is empty, and how Collision sometimes it's even worse. And while AEW in recent months has taken measures such as moving to smaller venues to mitigate this, the fact remains that one of AEW's biggest problems right now is selling tickets week to week. However, usually for their pay-per-views, it's a bit of the opposite. AEW still has strong showings for their pay-per-views and are usually, especially for the bigger pay-per-views, able to get at least 10,000 people in the building. And while that is all well and good, their biggest show of the year right now could be indicative of bigger problems to come. Because right now, AEW All-In Texas ticket sales are not going the way that people thought. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what the bigger problem with AEW and their ticket sales is, why All-In is not doing as well as in years past, and we're going to try to answer the biggest question of them all. Is AEW cooked? Spoiler alert, no, they're not. I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, let's dive right in and talk about All Elite Wrestling ticket sales. So AEW All In just a couple of years ago, back in 2023, broke the live ticketed attendance record, having over 81,000 fans for their biggest show of all time, arguably one of the biggest shows in wrestling history, All In 2023 at Wembley Stadium. And that was during a time where AEW started to see a decline in their US domestic ticket sales. In years past, AEW had been averaging right between 4.5 to 5,000 per average ticket sales per week. However, in 2023, those sales took a dip to the sub 4 right into the 3,000 per show attendance numbers. And while you can argue that this coincided with many controversies with the company, from CM Punk to wrestlers wanting out of their contract to wrestlers being released, despite this, All In was a bit of a watershed moment because it showed that outside of the United States, AEW and their ability to sell tickets was fairly strong. In fact, really freaking strong, because they did something that no other wrestling company has done, and that is sell 80,000 tickets for a single night wrestling show. And while you can argue about how many people were actually there and turnstile counts, the fact remains they sold a whole hell of a lot of tickets. So I guess the question is, why are they able to sell so many tickets for their shows in London and not necessarily their shows in the United States? And I think this can be broken down into a couple of different answers. Number one, right now we are seeing an oversaturation of professional wrestling week to week. Fans have so much to choose from when we're talking about pro wrestling, especially wrestling that is touring week in, week out. You don't just have AEW, you have 3 shows of WWE, 2 of which are touring every single week, one of which in NXT is touring on a quarterly schedule. You also have TNA doing tours. You have MLW still doing tours. You have GCW doing major shows. So there's so much wrestling out there and so much for fans to choose from that as AEW has declined in popularity, which is a fact, it has, you're going to see less and less fans choose to go to AEW shows. That doesn't mean that there's things that AEW can't do to fix that, but that is just a byproduct of going from your hottest period of all time, which was the summer into the fall of 2021, and now that just being a couple of years later. So it is natural for some sort of a decline to happen, but when we're talking about domestic ticket sales, you also have to talk about marketing. One of the bigger problems I think AEW has ran into over the last few years has been marketing. It used to be the case that if AEW was coming in town for a big show, whether it be Dynamite 1 at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., or AEW Grand Slam from Arthur Ashe Stadium back in 2021, if you were in those cities, you knew that that show was going to be there. Now AEW chooses not to really announce these shows well in advance and instead chooses to have tickets go on sale basically a month and a half out before the show. And while you could argue this is a good strategy for them to avoid WWE trying to do what WWE does, which is book cities that AEW is running for bigger shows, which, if you ask me, is kind of clown behavior. That's not good, WWE. That's not healthy for the industry. Regardless, it is how they do business. While I understand and I see the point in trying to mitigate that, I think you are doing yourself a disservice because AEW right now is probably on a roll as good as they've ever been. They might not have CM Punk. They might not have the Young Bucks on TV right now, but they are putting on some insane shows with one of the best talented rosters ever assembled in professional wrestling. So you want to highlight that. You want to market that. And if people don't know you're going to be in town, they're not going to buy your tickets. And that goes into one of the biggest reasons why All In Texas has not sold tickets at the rate that AEW probably wanted. Right now, All In Texas, according to WrestleTix, is sitting at 12,300 plus tickets sold. And this is Globe Life Field, which is a baseball stadium that at capacity can hold around 43,000 people. And for wrestling, that could be less, maybe could be more, but you want to get at least 20 to 30,000 people in that stadium in order for it to not only be more viable, but also look good. People want to be somewhere where it feels like there's energy. And if half the stadium is tarped off, it's not always going to feel like that. Now, I know what people are going to say. Well, WWE has done that. Look at SummerSlam 2022. Look at SummerSlam 2024. Look at many of the other big stadium shows they've had. They have had instances where half the stadium is tarped off or just empty seats on that side. And I get that. But we're not just talking about half the stadium here being tarped off. AEW has had a hard time selling tickets for the seats that they do have on the map. Right now, they have right around 6,000 tickets that they still need to sell to just get their basically a little bit more than a quarter, probably 45% of the arena fully sold. And there's no guarantee with us just being a couple of months out and ticket sales just moving at a snail's pace of that happening. I do think, for just what it's worth, they're going to get 20,000. But then that begs the question, well, why don't you just run like a 20,000 seat arena? You have the American Airlines Arena in Dallas you could run, and that probably would serve the purpose. You could do the thing where WWE does, where they have seats behind the stage, and it looks really cool. But instead, AEW is going about this, I think, in a different way. They believe that they can sell the spectacle of one of these big stadium shows in the United States. And the biggest difference between running that stadium show at Wembley and the United States is that those in Europe are starved when it comes to meaningful stadium wrestling. Even WWE has not had any indication that they're going to run a big stadium WrestleMania event in Wembley or anywhere in that region anytime soon. They will do their tours. They're doing one right now, and it's very successful. But they are very starved for big-time wrestling. So it is a lot easier, especially as many of these stars like Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, and others have not really been on the European scene in quite a while. It's easy for AEW to sell tickets because they get to see those stars every so often, so they're going to jump at the chance to do that. In the United States, the fans are a little bit different. Fans are more apt to watch at home. Fans are more apt right now to go and attend a WWE event over an AEW event, and I think that AEW needs to take that lesson. I think that there is a path forward, that being said, for them to sell tickets, and that is sell the shit out of this show. You have Kenny Omega versus Okada lined up. Do everything in your power to tell your audience that this is a match that they need to tune in for. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of your audience probably has not seen the epic matches that Omega and Okada have had in the past. So introduce that to them well before All In. Give them a reason as to why this matters. Same thing with Will Ospreay. They are beginning to plant the seeds of a story where Will Ospreay is going for the world title, and it seems like he will be the conquering hero at the end of All In. Well, tell that story and tell it bluntly. And aside from telling these stories, aside from having these big time characters on these shows, market the hell out of these events. AEW in the past would not have just said, well, we're having a big stadium show and it's going to happen. They would have people there on the ground talking about these events well beforehand. And we just saw an incident of this. MJF threw out the first pitch at a Texas Rangers game, and that's great. But you know when it happened, right? It happened on a Thursday, and guess what they weren't talking about the Wednesday beforehand? Yeah, that's right. MJF gonna be at the game tossing out the first pitch. It's these small little things, and maybe it's just me, someone who is a marketing professional who works in PR. Like, I look at these things and I'm just like, there's things we could be doing here. What are you doing? Point is, while ticket sales have not been great for this show, and I think a lot of it comes down to the market that they're in within the United States compared to other places, I do think that they can make a big show of this. And it also might take some creativity. You might have some seats that are blocked off. Well, put up some LED boards, put up some lasers, make it look cool on that side so it's not just tarped off seats. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can work with. But the point is, if AEW wants to start selling tickets again, if AEW wants to really restore the feeling, what they got to do is get creative. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about AEW's ticket sale woes? Do you think that they will end up selling out the entire stadium at Globe Life Stadium at All In, Texas? Let me know in the comment section. I, for one, will be there, so I will be able to report on the ground if that indeed does happen. But guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Also, be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.